Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Did something messed up here? Did I move the videos in the wrong area? I feel like, Tommy, you're usually on the bottom square, and Seth, you're on the right-hand side. Did something move, or am I just thinking things
You're
weird?
just changing it up.
The same.
All right, it seems the same.
I'm seeing the same thing.
All right,
I'm
maybe
always
it's just
on the
me.
I
bottom,
think we moved.
apparently.
I think we moved.
All right.
Tommy
Cool.
thinks I think
I'm gonna
we
find out.
moved.
You know what hasn't moved?
I'm just liking arguing now. So yeah, I'm
What
on the
we
bottom
wore-
right here.
What we wore from Thursday.
Yeah, see, he's got on his iPad. He's showing us on the. Yeah, see, I think you were on the bottom there.
Yeah.
So what I have a
I guess
random
I'm going-
question.
I'm moving up in the world. Woohoo.
I have a random question.
Okay.
If you guys all work from home, right?
Yes.
And
Oh,
like
no.
not all the time, but like there's a majority of your time.
99% of the
A lot of the time you're working from home. So in that work from home space, do you have snacks where you work? Do you have a spot in your office where you keep a little bag of snacks just in case you need some? Is that a thing? Tommy,
Yeah,
you got
I
a
got
whole, you got a
chocolate
whole
stash,
cabinet.
So
You got to be careful, Tommy. Don't let anyone hear where your stash is because your kids will
I
come
know,
get it.
there's a chocolate stash both next to me and then in the deep freezer. So
In the deep, you freeze your M&Ms, so that's a crunch. That's good.
yeah, some of the things kind of thing because no one ever goes in there.
No one looks for M&Ms in the freezer.
No one goes in the deep freezer. So
Yeah, that's a good
Oh,
one.
the snack idea is a great thing. We also bought like a hot pad. So I have again, which you also need to do, Mike, is my little, I have a small espresso pot. So if I really need some coffee, I can just do it all down.
Right downstairs. Okay.
No.
Do you have no snacks in your room in your office, Seth?
Not on a regular basis.
Okay, so it's like a rare thing.
Yeah, because it forces me to at least get off my butt and walk
move.
down the stairs.
that's
and
true.
Go get the snacks where I know they are.
Okay.
I mean, in the new house, I'm way up, right? Second floor
Okay.
versus basement, so I have to go down 2 floors.
Yep.
Whereas my old place, it was like, yeah, if I was going to do the freezer trick, oh man, I missed out.
Yeah.
I missed out.
Oh, no.
'Cause I had the deep freezer down there.
So my
Yeah.
new
Frozen
thing.
chocolate.
It hasn't been. I'm not a big sweets guy, but I
Yeah.
am like a beef jerky, like pepperoni.
Sure.
And my wife thinks I'm the craziest guy ever, and I'm like, it's because I'm Italian.
It's like crack.
She's like,
man.
I'll go upstairs to the so the kitchen's right above me. So I'll go upstairs, I'll go get some food. My favorite snack is some really good pepperoni, and I'll just go and get like a little five pieces of pepperoni, just eat them. And then I'll go downstairs, I'll do some work, do whatever, come back, I'll go to the restroom, and then I'll go back like, oh, I could use some more pepperoni. Just get 5 pieces. And if I'm not watch it, I will pound of pepperoni a week.
Yeah.
Oh, brother, yeah.
It's so
But that's
good.
exactly why I don't have snacks in my room, like in this space, because it becomes like my favorite snack. I need that, right?
Yeah, I've bought a couple I've bought a couple bags of Doritos and hidden them around the basement, and they are gone so fast.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
Well, I was going to say the beef jerky's been like the food of choice or snack of choice, but what you realize very quickly is there's not a lot of beef jerky in those bags.
No. Even when you buy the big bags of 10 ounces or a pound or whatever, it's like it's fluff.
I'm surprised at you, Mike. Like, you live close enough to one of the greatest places for beef jerky smoked anything.
I do.
You shouldn't be buying that like normal stuff that
what
is more plastic and 1/4 of a bag of
what is this thing I don't know
something.
about?
Carl's Country Market.
Really? I didn't know about this.
Are you kidding me?
Not even kidding.
It just
you.
happens to be the place I lived in, like I worked at when I was in high school. But
well, I'll go check it out then.
Ironically enough, their smokers still must be cranking the same thing, because every time I'm your way,
you smell the smell.
I always stop by there. No, I always stop by there, and I get the same beef sticks and the jerky, and it still tastes the same like 25 years ago.
What?
Amazing.
Okay.
If you want some real great smoked meats,
I do.
Plug for Carl's Country Market, Menominee Falls.
We're looking for sponsors. If you'd like to sponsor the
podcast,
right? Please sponsor us. We'd like free beef jerky. We'd love free beef jerky.
But they do it all, and they do it really, really well, and they've been doing it for a long time.
This episode sponsored by Carl's Beef Jerky.
Yeah, slap the logo on the background.
Yeah, I'll put a logo on the screen somewhere. Then no problem, man. Let's do it.
There you go.
Come on, Carl, call me.
Hit it up. You let me know, Mike. You go.
All
You
right,
go
I'll
there
let
this
you-
weekend.
Have your people talk to my people.
Have your
Bring
people
some
talk to
extra.
my people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I just upped the snack game for you.
You did. You just changed my life. This is gonna be
10x, man. 10x.
And I'm actually thinking about maybe I should get one of those like, meat. It's like a subscription service where you just like
No,
like once a
No,
month you
don't
get.
do that.
Does Carl offer this? Can I get Carl to send me meat
Probably
every
not.
month?
I'm gonna hit you up in the side
Okay.
chat here.
All right, here we go. All right. Well, while Michael's stuck thinking about food this morning, I hope you guys are all having a great morning this morning. Today's topic. Side note, this is a pre-recorded podcast. So, but this is going to be.
How would you know?
How would you know?
Oh, because we're wearing the same thing that we wore on Tuesday.
You guys are. I'm not. Look at my shirt.
You
It's different.
changed. You changed.
I changed.
Congratulations.
I got to keep the continuity of the podcast. We wear different clothes every day. So
You just tried to match the gray.
I did.
Yeah,
I got the
good.
memo. I felt left
Yeah.
out.
Welcome.
So now I'm wearing the gray sweater like everyone else is.
That's green.
So today's topic, we are pulling in a new topic from, well, not a new topic. It's our favorite visual blogger, I guess, Enrico Bertini. So good. A brand new article, or is this a new one or older one, Tommy? We just found it recently, July 21st. So it's July this year.
July 21, as in the year 21.
Oh wow.
Last year is when this came out. Okay,
or is it this? Yeah, I think it's.
I don't know.
it's got to be the year and the month.
Yeah.
He's a smart visual guy. He couldn't have a blog that writes articles with misinformation on it. Come on.
Hey! What? 2 episodes ago, we were reviewing a book from 1975.
That's true. That's true. We don't mind going back.
It doesn't
in time.
matter. Data
matter.
doesn't. These are good
It's
concepts.
timeless. We've picked a timeless career.
Yeah, that's right.
Love it. So in this article, Enrico Bertini talks about what makes data visualizations confusing. Great article. So we'll make sure this is in the description of the video because we're not chatting this out through the chat window. So this will be in the description. So if you want to read this article, pause the podcast, go read the article on your own, and then come back and we'll discuss. So, all right, guys, we've read it. Let's get into this. What is this? What makes visualizations confusing? Seth, I'm going to kick it off with you this time because usually I kick it over to Tommy to begin with. So let's go with Seth. What do you think, Seth, about the article? Anything that stood out to you initially?
I mean, in an overview, he's challenging, or not challenging. He's describing the issues that some visuals present that are harder to understand, even for him. Right?
Correct.
So it outlines like a scatter plot, and another like kind of gradient bar chart that with multiple axes, where how do you read it, right? Where you're stumped even as an avid digester of information via reports.
Yep.
That you just look at something and you're like, I don't know what this is trying to tell me. It's going to take a lot of cognitive load for me to digest it. And just kind of talking about like, is this representative of everybody? How do we, work around or through these visuals? Or is there a way in which, like from a psychological perspective, or like maybe it's, how do we help our end consumers potentially like digest these challenging visuals, right? And I think there's a lot of layers in that, which will be kind of an interesting dynamic in the conversation. But ultimately, like, I think he just goes through and challenges, like saying these are the difficulties with reading some of these visuals, and it could be different per individual.
And I think one of the charts that I've never really seen before, but one of them I have seen. It's called the connected scatter plot. Basically, there are time-bound data points that are occurring on a scatter plot, and then that data point particularly moves throughout time. And as that data point moves over time, excuse me, you can see that the data points kind of wander around the chart. So in this graph that he shows here as an example from PolicyViz, it's talking about unemployment rate versus maybe inflation. I can't quite see the other graphical there. So unemployment rate versus as a percentage related to something else. And it's graphing each political party and different points in time as the graph changes, and you can see these different, it kind of starts data starts migrating all over the place. I think I felt like I saw a lot of this when I was looking at like the COVID-19 charts as well, similar connected things. Like, hey, look, this is the days since they found their first case, and they're plotting all these different plots together. There's some graphs there in that COVID-19 space where people are plotting how many days did it take for this virus to get to a certain level in certain countries. And I was like, what are we drawing here? I don't understand. Like, are the high numbers good? Are the low numbers good? I don't understand. So yeah, I agree with that. Any thoughts, Tom, that you would add there?
Yeah. So what I really love about the article and is too often in our space, we're always talking about and you see it on LinkedIn where it's good visuals because it follows the best practices or looks really nice. And it's like, here, what makes a visual bad? And it's those 3 pages on LinkedIn. And those are good for maybe they're good, but the idea that visuals, no, but I mean, because I think it sends the wrong message where we're always talking about like the best practices for visuals.
Yeah.
And one of the things Enrico, I think really challenges from the onset, the thing that really stuck out to me is the mental models that we've talked about where I already have an idea of 2 parts of a visual. One, what is a bar chart supposed to represent? Us obviously have a very high, mental model there, but then 2, what is the data that I'm looking at? So, and then that's one part of this in terms of confusion, which can be overcome. But then there's this other part on maybe it really is from the clutter point of view. And I really want to, for me, the part that I really want to focus on is that what he calls novelty is if we present a visual in our organization to a stakeholder, to consumers, and maybe there's that, I don't know, that confusion, right? There's that immediate, I don't know what this is trying to say. That doesn't mean that we didn't do our job or we have to change the visual. And that's what I'm getting out of this is, well, we can kind of understand what's the context, what they're looking at. Because again, we've talked about this, that range of consumer. You have someone who really can understand a visual point of view, the data that they're looking at. And some people, it's a new metric or it's a new kind of combination of data points. That in itself can be overcome. And I don't think we hard press ourselves, or I think we really sell ourselves short when we say everything has to follow the exact practice. To me, it's really talking about like when we try to overdo it. And I think that's the whole other part where it's that can't be overcome. So
I want to add maybe my 2 cents here. I really liked his point in the article. And about halfway down, he starts talking about this concept of a mental model. When we look at pieces of data, the reader has preconceived ideas of what you're looking at. If I see things that look like bars, I assume it's a bar chart, right? And my understanding of bar charts and how my mental model looks at that visual, it's kind of hard because if you think about all the different people in the world and how many visuals have they seen or studied or looked at, your experience would vary widely from people who are just learning it to people who know really, really well and are building it. So I have to assume here, right? When we this is, to me, it talks about our audience, right? Know your audience. What data literacy do they have? I think this speaks a lot to that. You can't use very complex visuals. You may understand it, but someone who hasn't spent a lot of time, and he says in the article here that I thought was very well articulated, was if you think about the mental model, if you work at thinking about that, you can change your mental model. You can spend more time thinking about what is the insightful piece of data that's coming out of that chart. And so the creator of the chart is trying to convey a message through graphics. You're trying to look at those graphics, interpret it, and understand the same points that the creator made. You're basically conveying information through, like, what's the phrase? A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? To me, it's something like I could explain to you why sales are up or down, but if you show me a graph, I don't have to explain anything if I understand the graph.
If you understand the graph.
And I think that's where he's going about here. It's like there are people or there are graphs out there that are just more difficult to understand.
I think it opens up a different door though, at the same time, right? Like, because he's presenting specific visuals that he has a challenge digesting. And and we can extrapolate that and say, hey, I have the same thing when I encounter certain visuals. Like, I just don't know how to read it. And frankly, the examples he gives, I'm same flummox. Like, what is
What
that
the heck?
supposed- right?
Yeah.
My mental model does not digest like
Does not
these
compute.
things either. But I think it also opens that door to like kind of what you're touching on, which is audience, which is there is a challenge around visualization in general that we need to be cognizant of. And there are a lot of factors that play into that related to like the organization. Do people understand the data? Right? Do they have a general sense of what a bar chart is supposed to
Yes.
do or mean, or what is a pick your visual, right? That's basic enough, or we would think is super basic, but at the same time, are you conveying the right things and allowing the end user to come along for the ride? And I guess the question for me is, like, what is our responsibility as report authors or builders to try to meet everybody where they're at in terms of like who's consuming the report so that they understand it?
Yeah. Yes.
And I love that, because there's obviously the basic side of bar charts, like, are trending over time, something grouped by a category, which is in itself something pretty straightforward. But I think we have to do a better job. And again, where we sell ourselves short is we don't introduce a lot of type of aggregations or other ways to measure things, how it showcases on a visual, right? Like, let's say we're doing a percentage of something, or something that's like a rolling average, something different from the user point of view. And someone doesn't know how to look at the visual, even if it's in a bar chart. It is our job. Like, that's part of the communication, because we have to help.
Yes.
It's not just the visual side. You may have a great title, right? But you also have to communicate too, what should they be looking at in that bar chart? Like, right. So where it's like, maybe that's adding in a constant line or an average line, something like, okay, where to focus, but that may be pre-baked into the calculation, all the model. But we also have to do a really good job on, whenever we're introducing new concepts, not new visuals, is that communication on, okay, if I'm looking at this, what should I be looking for?
Yes, I agree with this. I think this is a great technique that should be used more of, or Microsoft should make it easier for us as report authors. Here's one. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, here's a great ideas for ideas.powerbi.com. I think we need to have better equipment inside Power BI desktop that can better explain why this visual's here, and when the visual is doing certain things, what is that indicating to the user, right? This line is going up,
right,
is a good thing. This line going down is a bad thing, right? Or when these bars are showing a pattern like this, it means, sales are not doing well. Or it just simply, I was working on a chart the other day where we had a cumulative total of actual sales by month versus budgeted sales by month. And so I had two lines, and the cumulative total from like, January 1st all the way till now, it just keeps growing. It doesn't go down, just adds. So basically you get this kind of like growing curve. And it was really interesting because when we graphed it, it made sense once I saw it, but I had to explain what was going on. Like, okay, here's the line of the actuals. See how we're lagging behind in the budget, right? We're behind schedule here. So we need to do more work to close the gap. And so when you explained it, it made more sense. So being able, like, I feel like if I could take a Power BI report and take a pause and then doodle on the screen, okay, look here, this is the information that's important here. Look here at this, and when it does this, it's good. When it does this, it's bad. Like, to me, that's the story I want to convey in more detail inside our reports. Sometimes. Thoughts?
No, I love that, because I think that's where I think a lot of developers sell ourselves short, and because we don't go that extra. We don't. I don't want to say try to experiment, but we don't try to customize a little more, because it does.
Do we have the time? Like, I mean, we talk about these wonderful ideas in the podcast. We're like,
hey, let's not get all Seth. Let's.
Sorry. That's positive.
Keep it positive, Mike.
Who's
I
going to give
bring
me
it
all the
down.
time to do this stuff? I mean, I think it's a good idea. It's just like
no, but at the same
prioritize
time,
it.
but like the cumulative total, right? That's very basic in the sense of something that we can create, but introducing that into a report, like let's say that is going
Some
to
people wouldn't
confuse a lot of
understand it.
I think a good amount of people,
Yeah.
and not just what it's doing, but
Yes.
why it's like, what am I supposed to look at?
Yeah.
So
What's
I'm not saying
important
you're,
here?
yeah, I'm not saying you're doing like a
Mhm.
rolling 6 months divided by 5. No, I'm just saying something like
That would be
cumulative
almost an
total.
average, but yeah.
Sure, yeah, I know. It's off the cuff. Okay, so
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Yeah,
So,
I understand.
but the idea of introducing some of those new metrics where it is on the problem I think a lot of consumers has is it's on the same standard visual where you're doing like, something weighted where it's on a bar chart, but it's using it. It's not just total like the sum. And I think
Yes. That's
yeah,
what he talks about in the article. He talks about in the
yeah,
article here, like that exact thing. Like a number that is high in value has a very small bar. What the heck? Like
right.
it's when the author of the visual builds something into the visual that is very counterintuitive to what you're used to seeing.
Right.
Yes.
So like to me it's still digestible in a basic visual format, right? It just takes a moment for somebody to like grok that, oh, like that's different. I haven't seen
Mhm.
that before. To me, that's very simple to like hang something off and say, here's the definition of what you're looking at, right?
Yep.
Where I don't need to give you more than just some text. I guess where this is interesting to me and where I want to take the conversation, we'll see if you guys want to play along.
Sure.
It is if we recognize that there are visuals that are confusing on many levels, right? The one that's really easy for me to solve is the bar chart, is the pie chart, is the line chart, right?
nope.
All these things where I can
Lost me a pie
easily
chart.
just hang something off and say, hey, here's some text to describe what you're looking at. This should provide you more than enough context to understand what's going on in the visual. Where this gets interesting to me, but I'll hang that there, right? We have the simple definitions, or like I can describe the metric that is in the visual, which should help you understand what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Then to me, you have some more challenging visuals, right? Something where you're mixing the bar chart and the line chart together, right?
Yep.
Where you have multiple axes. It's a little bit more difficult for the end user to consume if they're not used to it. What do you do in those cases? And then I think, Mike, you talked to a point here where it'd be great to have some equipment or tooling to do this, but what about a really extremely challenging visual?
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue like where this article drives me is, as a report author, 100%, the only time we should really be using extremely complicated visuals is when you absolutely have to, right?
Correct.
Because we're already defining to some level, like, keep it as simple as possible.
Yep.
Always, because you don't know who's going to be consuming your report, and their level of digesting visuals is going to be a lot less than you. So if I have to go through an extensive amount of something to be determined by us talking, but
learning or mental model changing or whatever
of figuring something out,
yes,
then you're already presenting a hurdle for somebody to digest the insight you're trying to convey.
Agreed.
So like as we progress down the more challenging to extremely challenging visual, like I think for report authors, I would say make sure you have to go that route.
Mm-hmm.
But to you guys, like if we take a step away from the general or generic, which I think we talked about a lot, like when you guys hit challenging or extremely challenging visuals, are there like, what are some things we should potentially be spending time on as report authors to like bring the insights forward? Like, is there something we can add to the report? How do you bring to light the insights for the end user, because they're likely not just going to be able to figure it out on their own?
I had an interesting use case around this exact situation. Built a report, working with a client, helping them figure out the details of the report, and I thought I was conveying the right information on the page. I even did sections I had a visual. I removed visuals, right? We had too many initially. I took away a lot of stuff. Very clean. Literally 3 visuals on a page. And then on the left-hand side of the visual, I described this visual is this. And I defined some things. Hey, look at it like this. Look at it like this. Look at it like this. Here's a definition of that visual. And then I went to the business and said, here's the report. What are your, like, I tried to really, I feel like sometimes when I do this, I try to lead the witness. Like, hey, look at this great thing we did. Look how easy it is to read. And they're like, I don't understand. Like, and I just, this time I was just like, just try to be really quiet and be like, okay, here it is. What are your initial impressions? Just take a moment. Just click around on some stuff, look at some things, figure it out. And it was very interesting because what I thought was very clear in my text bubbles next to the visual of explaining what you're looking at and why it's important, even my written text, they didn't read it. So they were like, what's this mean? I'm like, well, if you read the text on the right-hand side,
literally right next to you.
it's literally right there.
Not
like
hidden.
I thought like, so, and it was only after like we reviewed it again later on where they were like, I've actually spent time on this. I've sat and looked at it a bit more. And that's when they were like, okay. And I could, this whole mental model thing for here is what it's triggering a memory that's like, that was what was happening. They were changing their mental model to align to the visuals and the report. And they were then able to align the value of what they were looking at with their job and could say, oh, this does make sense. I understand what we're trying to say now. And I was saying, what do we want to change? They're like, don't change it. I understand it now. so don't rock the boat.
Right. And I think ultimately, whether it's a challenging visual or an extremely challenging visual,
yep,
once it's described to the end user and the importance and the value, you get there.
Yep.
Right. And then the end consumer is like, oh, no, like, yeah, don't change it. I get it now.
Yes.
But how do we get them there?
For me, in this situation, I had to sit down and we talked about it. Like we sat and talked about.
You don't always have that.
I don't always have luxury. So what does that look like? Is it a video that you record? Is it some training that you produce around the visuals and the reports? I don't know. I think for me, one takeaway from that whole experience was less is always more. Don't feel like I'm an analyst. I understand lots of data. Lots of visuals make sense to me. When I showed this report to people, they didn't even know half the bars were clickable. So like, I made
which is another challenge.
Another
right?
challenge.
Like even the most basic layout of a report, you're like, no, you have a table at the bottom.
Yes.
These bar charts, you can click on them, and they automatically filter things.
You didn't break the report. No one else can see that. What you just
exactly.
Which is why drill through is such a problematic conversation because
no one knows it's there.
And right click.
Yeah, but it's exactly right.
Like, oh, you mean I can get that data specifically just by right clicking on this? Yes.
Yes.
So I think to the challenging visual, I'll take that a step further where the visuals that Enrico presents on the article, and a lot of times the visuals that you see that someone posts on LinkedIn that are really cool looking, they're for a specific point in time for a specific purpose.
Yes.
And that is a big difference. And we've talked about this before where a lot of times I think if we have a need for advanced visual, it's because we have an advanced request. Right, where there's a specific scope that only that visual can serve. That because I deal with this problem where I try to dive in and go, what if I did this? Or I want to see this. But from the consumer point of view, if they didn't ask for that specific of a request or customized request to see it a certain way, then maybe even that providing that advanced visual is not the best choice. The other part of this too. Can
I comment there?
Yeah.
Write down your second thought because I think it's a good second thought. But I want to jump on your first point here first. I feel like I'm weak in this area of being able to simplify the visuals. I get bored with bar charts all the stinking time, and I'm like, oh, I got to write another bar chart. I want to build something fun.
You feel like you're not doing your job.
Let's build a scatter chart. What are the two random dimensions I can put on there? Now, what if I put a background on it and like we can do quadrant? It's a quadrant graph. Ooh, everyone likes quadrant graph. Like I get so excited about making the more complicated thing
looking at it a different way.
Yeah. And I'm like, I try to challenge myself to do that. And I think in some cases it's a detriment because we're not listening to the audience or taking their input and keeping it simple.
Well, you said the magic word. You said the crux of all of this. No, and your first point.
Oh, okay.
It's the value that the audience or the person gets out of that visual.
Yes.
That first visual you showed them did not show any, like initially didn't show the value. They didn't
to their daily job.
It's not just looking, and you said the other good point too. It's not just them looking at it for the first time where they're going to get all these insights.
Yeah.
The point of it is that they can go back to it to see if something's changed. Like, oh, I remember that, look at that trending, or look at that that gap's getting wider. That's what they're focusing on. They don't care about, 80% of the visual. They're only looking at that gap now.
Yep.
And if for any advanced visual or simple too, it's that value that someone can track over time, because we're not building. More often than not, our reports are not for an article or for a specific point in time. It's for something for
general
someone to
use
monitor,
reports,
or even targeted, or even analytical. Like, that we don't show it to them once and then delete it. We're not putting it in PowerPoint and not in Power BI service.
Yep.
Where usually those more advanced visuals come to play.
And I'd like to, I don't know if this is a good point to do this. And if you have another, were you gonna say something, Seth? I think you're looking like you're gonna.
No, I just think it's presenting this challenge where in the article, it's almost like he's challenging like his mental model and that he should be able to understand something deeper before looking at a visual, so it has the insight and the meaning. And to me, this is almost driving at a separate part of the visual itself is missing something then. Not the visual itself, but there needs to be something alongside it that produces meaning, right? If I can't look at a challenging, if the assumption is, well, it's not even an assumption. When you're, as a report author, developing a visual, whether or not it's widely used. And the more obscure it gets, I would say you have to have an accompanying something alongside that to produce meaning before the user goes and looks at the visual. Like, hey,
interesting.
Here's a black screen. You're not going to get it. You have to watch my video first, or right, whatever the chat. To your point earlier, equipment or tooling to say, here's some fundamental things you need to understand. Now when you grok this and you get what I'm trying to produce, now I'll show you the visual, right? Because it's not. To me, it's not just the visual. Like, if anybody spends enough time looking at something, can they drive or derive the insights? You would hope so. But at the same time, if somebody's exerting that much mental power, to me, there has to be that accompanying side material, something that defines the meaning for me in what I'm looking at. Because otherwise, there's no point in presenting the visual. Right, you can't just arbitrate. And we talk about this with a bar chart. Throw a bar chart up there, and if you're weighting averages and doing something that's out of the norm and not giving any accompanying material, your base level user's never going to understand it. They're just going to be like, "Great, I'll never use this again."
Yeah,
but that's not the purpose of why you built what you did. And obviously, there's a reason behind you using that sort of visual. If you're being smart about it, right? There's always the it looks cool. Right, crowd where that's worthless, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of
you're saying so many things here that I want to talk about.
Anyway, go ahead.
It's good. Okay. So, okay. 2 points you made up there. I'm trying to write my notes down here. The first one was really around, I think we need to be better listeners to people looking at our visuals. I think that's one. And I like your idea of being able to ramp people up and basically bring them along for the ride or the journey to get them to understand the visual. So I think I agree with you there. It looks cool. Okay, I want to hang on this point for a moment here. Even if you have a complex visual, if it looks bad, people will, I think, more quickly dismiss it and not try to understand it. So, for example, if you have a report page, not a lot of design thought out, things are kind of all over the place. No order, no boundaries, no scrims. You already are, to me, you're already playing at a negative to put that complex or that more elaborate visual on the page, because people are already disassociating with that report because the whole thing looks like a mess. So the more you can even like, and again, I've used this term in the past, like if you pretty it up a little bit more, if you spend a little more effort making it look attractive as a report, you'll be able to catch people, even though it's the data is the important part. If you lose people before they even want to spend time to learn it, you're done.
Well, I think to Seth's point, and I'm finally going to agree with them after 2 episodes.
Whoa.
I know.
I wish I had like a little bow, 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 like a bell or something like that. That would, we need.
Like I said, when we start our Sirius FM channel, we can have that.
Yeah, when we get a real podcast, we'll actually. Yeah, when we start the real podcast, we'll get real effects on here.
Exactly.
Right now, it's just Michael saying noises.
Yeah, so kind of, yeah.
That's crazy.
So, well, no. To your point, I think the problem is you Mike, you might have had the text on the pages saying this is showing X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
But again, what's the point of the visual in the first place? It's not just text. It's an easier representation, a less cognitive load of someone to see an outlier, what's important, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And text is not going to do that. If anything, the best idea would to show them the visual if they were like, what does the visual look like if something's out of whack, right? Where something
exactly.
Because you're like, hey, this visual is showing cumulative and the gap. And you're like, where's the gap? But if you show, like, you basically showed the data in a certain way, which a lot of storytelling usually is doing, but showed the visual in a certain way where, hey, this is when you would want to be alerted because these things shouldn't be so separated, or when whatever the data points there are, that's the point of the freaking visual in the first place. We're not supposed to just provide the text. We're making it a lot easier to summarize a lot of data. So
that's
show them
point.
An example of the visual when it's good or it's bad.
And I don't know.
What I know you can look at.
I know you can do this with bookmarks, but but in my opinion here is I need to be able to manipulate the data in a way that conveys when to take action when this visual is saying something, right? And so I kind of need, like, to your point, Tommy, I need a snapshot of the visual where, hey, look at it in this state.
Right.
Look at what this is doing. I should take action here. This is the action. Or look at in this state. This is normal. So don't worry. Sales are on track. We're not having a problem.
That's a huge point.
Right. So if you can give them the ends of the spectrum of when I'm looking at a visual, when I need to take action, that helps with, like, okay, because and I don't know how to convey this point is, when I get into the visuals or the report page, the data is just default. Whatever you set the report up as it publishes. Over time, that visual data will change because you're refreshing the data set, new data is coming in, fine, whatever. But if you don't put something on that graph that indicates when things are out of tolerance or intolerance, or things are like, the data may never show those use cases, right?
Yeah,
you're right.
You see what I'm saying there? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. But I think this dovetails into, like, wouldn't it be great if we had a better way to show an example, right?
Yes.
But this to me is a time thing, right? Because for call it a medium level visual, right?
Sure.
Like where we have a bar and, like, the data and you have examples of, like, when you would take action.
Yes.
You can easily enter data. Right?
That's true.
Like, you can enter data to the examples, right? But now you're talking about doing that for a visual, maybe more than one visual. Like, now it's part of your page where you're replicating the visual, and then you're creating data to support that, and then you're creating the documentation where it's like, hey,
I get it.
This would be valuable when, right? So that's what I'm talking about, like supporting level material, where it's almost like you can't. It almost pushes us into the realm of, like, yeah, it's great that we can build reports so fast, but should we?
Right.
Well, maybe this only occurs on the governed and certified corporate data that we just talked about in the last episode.
Because the biggest challenge, like, for people not in the data space, but people in the data space, so that's
hopefully you know this.
in the data space, people who know data, you can wrap yourself around an axle instantly, right? Like, people come with random questions of how stuff works and why and what's it supposed to be. And if you don't have the definitions for why you built what you built, you don't have the purpose, you don't have the scope, you don't have these things, give it a couple weeks. The question's going to come in. and you're going to be like, I don't know. Let me go figure out where the requirements are, because it could mean like I could have built this in 6 different ways. It could have been like we were supposed to present this. Why didn't we do this to the data? Why didn't, and if you don't put those, that scope, the definition, why you built things the way you did, you get into this cycle of, then eventually somebody's going to belong and be like, why don't we do this? Right? Like now your report just changed completely and you have no idea whether or not that was a good decision. Right. And I think this is where like this conversation of what is the insight you're trying to convey? Here's an example of the plus minus of like what you would want to decide based on the insight you should be deriving from this report, I think are good examples of how you bring other users along for the ride. And if that's important for your organization, then they should be building time into you doing that. Or is there a default of like, there's just this expectation that, hey, when you launch this, you have 10 users, you describe to them how it all works, and then via business innate knowledge of that area that you're just assuming that that information gets conveyed on.
Yeah, I think that I think there's 2 parts of that, where one, I don't think every single visual needs that customization
I
of that
agree with
document.
that.
So, but I'll focus on the first part that I wanted to say was every visual, regardless if it's the same bar chart or using a bar chart 3 times in a visual, requires the user to understand the benchmark, right? So if I'm looking at a number, even if it's a card or a tree map, like there's the mental model of what that visual should show and then what the data should be showing. So like the immediate thing when you look at a tree map, you kind of expect in your head for everything to be like the same size square. So obviously there's going to be that outlier that's where you're going to focus. So every single visual is going to have that benchmark, in the same way with the data, where what's the user needing to focus from a benchmark, right? Like if USA is higher than normal, right? Okay, that's my benchmark now, but what should I be monitoring over time? And that goes for standard to advanced. To the second point on providing that, like those examples, again, I don't think that's very focused on those very maybe more analytical reports or KPI reports, where those needs are rare. I don't think that those needs for those advanced visuals or those advanced explanations are going to be in 8 out of 10 reports. I think it's going to be that very custom request where people are looking at it a very certain way that requires that for maybe 1 or 2 visuals. But I don't think that's something that we need to bake into everything.
I agree. I'm torn because these are good ideas, but at what time cost? Like,
right.
Do I really want to go all in?
Right. But
on the
that's
time?
what I'm saying is like, could
rare.
you, well, challenge to your example, right? Could you have simplified your visuals as opposed to gone the full
That's true.
page, left-hand side thing? And
Yep. Yeah. Would have.
right? Like
Should have. Maybe.
That's the, I guess, pros and cons of what is the best way to convey the insight. Can you simplify the message, or is it require, more advanced stuff? If it does, then I think innately you should add the extra.
Yeah.
There's a great book I'm reading by someone named Douglas Hubbard, and it's called How to Measure Everything. And at the end of the day, it's like our job in like any metric, and really our jobs at the end of the day is just to try to make information valuable. And whether
Agreed.
that's 1 visual or 7. So however,
I think we
we're
lose that
displaying it,
context.
and I think we lose that with how cool I created this. I did this. I'm working with you guys to see like what the heck our numbers are internally for like, how are people listening? And it's like, what if I did this? And it's like you go down rabbit holes where like, well, what's valuable to us? How do we make information valuable?
Is this, Tommy, what we say for exactly your concept around what we talked about last episode with corporate data, corporate things, and looking at that going, well,
you want to fight? What?
Yeah.
No, all corporate numbers should be highly,
What matters to you in corporate numbers, right? That's corporate. That's every number is corporate.
No one said this was subjective.
Anyways, I think we should kind of wrap this one. It's been about a little bit under our normal time, but I think this is a good topic. I really like the article. So in making sure I get the name right here. Enrico, thank you very much for the article. Very challenging thoughts. It's making me think about really critically, like what do we build here? What are we supposed to be building here?
Whether or not we took it in the direction that you even meant with your article,
Yeah, we definitely
don't know,
didn't.
but
Probably not. Probably
You
all
can only
wrong.
take it that 10% down.
Exactly right. Well, one thing that we would do, we would be remiss if we at least didn't mention Happy Turkey Day, Happy Thanksgiving from the U.S. So this is Turkey Day. And we're recording this episode earlier because we're all sitting around stuffing our faces today, anyways. So we're not getting up early to talk to you about data. We're gonna do that beforehand. So, anyways.
However you feel about the holiday, take a moment to be thankful for you guys and the podcast and all of our community people that join us. So enjoy the restful day and full bellies, hopefully.
Yeah.
And we will.
Well, I hope you're listening to this podcast when you're tired of listening to your family all day, argue about food and
thing
you are listening to us on this day.
What channel to watch, and you're tired of the Thanksgiving Day parade. And
I don't want
all the other things that go along
put
with
on the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to just go go for a walk. I'm going to listen to a great podcast about data instead. So if you chose to listen to our podcast on the day of Thanksgiving, kudos to you. We appreciate you. So because you're such a loyal, avid fan on Thanksgiving, no less, we just appreciate your listenership. We really like the community that's here. We're very thankful for you guys as listeners and have a lot of fun talking and discussing and working through these data things. We appreciate you. And our only request is, if you like what you're hearing, if you're getting some value from it, please share it with somebody else. Let somebody else know that you're enjoying the podcast. It really helps us out and get the word out there that this is kind of a fun podcast. It's informative, but I hope you get a couple laughs out of it as well. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find it anywhere they're available: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn. Make sure to subscribe on the audio so you can get all of our latest episodes. And again, if you are thankful for this podcast, let us know. Share the word.
It's hilarious. We literally forgot it was Thanksgiving Day, and Seth's like, "Hey, this is the recording for Thanksgiving. We should say the word thankful 1,000 times at the very end of the podcast so people know it's Thanksgiving."
Maybe in the
closing. Know the chat too. I know the chat. Someone's gonna be in the chat going, "It's Thanksgiving. You're not saying."
We got you. We
appreciate you. Keep listening, please. Thank
you. Please listen. Please don't ignore us. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.